Hello, my friends. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today is Sunday, and that means coffee Klatch. Coffee Klatch is a Dutch word, an old word, which means that I invite you over for a coffee and some chit chat, and to mostly bookish chit chat. So yeah, I had a very uneventful week. I put together a new bookshelf picture, which is already full, and there are still many books on my table. And this shelf needs to go because it's becoming really dangerous. It goes woo. So yeah, and I can't attach it to the wall because this is a rental house and they don't like that. So yeah, I have to find a new solution. So this one will go upstairs, and I will have hopefully soon a new backdrop. Anyway, what have I read? Well, I've read Grandy Hendrix, How to Sell a Haunted House. Brand new. I read Ice by Kavan. I read For Bread Alone by Mohamed Choukri. I read Tasmania by Paolo Giordano. Of course, I'm reading Fernando Pessoa's Book of Disquiet. And I've read a book that made me cry, and that's an absolute first. An absolute first. So I've read thousands and thousands of books, mostly a book a day. That's my rate, mostly. Only 4 of those books were graphic novels. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Yeah, you heard that right. Not even as a child. I didn't read comic books. I didn't like them. And then this book comes along. I found it in my library. It has won a very important graphic novel award in France, Angoulême, I think it is. Angoulême, yeah. And it is not yet translated into English, but I hope it will be soon because this book is so relevant and so beautiful. So it is by Marcello or Marcello Quintanilha, or Quintanilha, and it says, "Listen, beautiful Marcia." Marcia is a very well-respected nurse who works in a local hospital. She lives in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, which are the slums of Rio de Janeiro, together with a boyfriend and her biological daughter. Now she's happy, everything goes well for her. She's very much loved everywhere. Everybody loves her. And but at a certain point, they discover that her teenage daughter has an STD. And yeah, that raises a lot of alarm bells. And they realize that she fell into the hands of one of those gangs, local gangs, or and the militias who are there, because you have to know, in 2000, they sent military convoys to the favelas, but quickly they became part of the gangs. But yeah, this book is about the almost impossible struggle for parents to keep their kids out of gangs, because yeah, those children see them as role models. They see the bling, they see the money, they see the attitude, they see the guns, the power. It's very difficult. And yeah, this is a very heart-wrenching story about they finding out, having fights with their daughter. The daughter strikes her stepfather. It becomes really impossible. And at a certain point, one of the gang members is in the hospital, and the mom has to give the gang member an injection, and they find that it was unnecessary or whatever. They found it an insult. They took it as an insult. And then the daughter tells one of those guys to teach her stepfather a lesson. And yeah, this happens. So they have a fight, and then this is how the lesson is shown. So you can see And then more and more they realize that she's losing her daughter, and the nightmare she has is what tore me apart. So this is the depiction of the nightmare. Beautiful, beautiful. I can't imagine that when you are living in the States with all those gangs, or in bigger cities, huge cities. There are gangs in Brussels too, but they are smaller. But in London, I can imagine, or northern Britain, or whatever, wherever, Paris, les banlieues, it must be difficult to keep your kids out of their hands. And it tore me apart. It's beautiful. I hope you can read it soon in English, but for now it's available in Dutch, French, Spanish, and Portuguese, of course. I think also German, but I'm not sure. So Listen Beautiful, Marcia by Marcello Quintanilha, or Quintanilha. We are also reading, of course, together with Micah and the Classics&Company event, we are reading Fernando's Pessoa, the book of Disquiet. So we just started last week, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. People are very happy to be reading this book, and Jack from the Rambling Raconteur is our VIP host. Please join us in the Discord. There are a couple of Portuguese people there too to talk about this book, to give a lot of backstory. So it's wonderful. It's a wonderful experience. Then I read Paolo Giordano. Maybe you know Paolo Giordano. He wrote The Solitude of Prime Numbers, or Solitude of Prime Numbers, and this is his novel Tasmania. It is not yet translated. It is about a man who is married, and they have difficulties to have a baby, and there's IVF, but that doesn't go very well. And at a certain point, he has difficulty to deal with that problem, and he goes looking for a problem that is much bigger than his, and that is global warming. And he wants to write essays about it, and he talks to numerous people about global warming. And apparently Tasmania is one of the safest places to live if it goes all out of hand. And I didn't care much for this book. It was very I couldn't care for it. I didn't have any connection with the people. It was very fragmentary and no, it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. Then a book that really was for me, and I highly recommend, is Mohamed Choukri's For Bread Alone. This is translated by Paul Bowles, and Tennessee Williams said, a true document of human desperation, shattering in its impact. It is really, really powerful. So, what is this book about? It is set in Morocco, somewhere in the 30s. It begins somewhere in the 30s. Mohammed and his family, he's a little child then, 5 years old, and they flee their little town because of hunger and the drought, and they walk to Tangiers, which is a very long walk through desert and heat and whatever, and they lose quite a few family members. And then they realize that once they arrive in Tangiers, that life isn't any better. Now, his mother finds work as a vegetable seller in the local markets, and he sometimes helps his mom, but he really becomes a street kid, and he is streetwise, and he steals because he is hungry, and he starts selling drugs and stuff, and it's a very powerful book. And he then leaves Tangiers, comes back after many years, and then he gets into trouble and into he's imprisoned, and there in prison he meets a man who teaches him to read and write and everything about literature. And yeah, beautiful, strong, very impactful, bleak, difficult to read, but beautiful. And then Ice by Anna Kavan. This is a Dutch translation. Funny enough, the day that Sean from Travel Through Stories published his excellent, absolutely excellent review of this book, Ice by Anna Kavan, which was written in 1967, and she passed away 1 or 2 years after that. It is difficult to say what this book is. Sean does it brilliantly. For me, Ice is, well, you have to know, Anna Kavan was a very troubled woman. She had a lot of mental issues. She was in and out institutions. She was a high-functioning heroin addict. And then she wrote this story. This story is a sort of science fiction, classic, dystopian novel. It's about a man. So there has been a nuclear war. And instead of global warming, it is a sort of an ice age that sets in. And there are 2 ice walls that crushes the land where people are living on. And we follow a man who is looking for a girl. He doesn't even know her name, and she is very frail, she is an albino, I think. She has white hair, very pale skin, and he wants to save her. But he immediately in the story, you know that the man is partly hallucinating. So you don't really know when he's hallucinating and when he's telling the truth. For me, it was more of a metaphor of having an addiction and mental problems on top of it. And you have to know that ice was also the name of heroin back in the day. Some call it brown sugar, others call it ice. And it's like she wants to tell that her world is crushing under ice. And that in between those 2 ice walls, her life becomes way too complicated, and there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of bleakness, there's a lot of sexual violence. So yeah, I think in a way she tried to describe her addiction that finally crushed her. I will post a link to Sean's excellent review. He explains it much better than I do. But this was my extra that I found what it was about. Then, real fun. This was fun to read. So, How to Sell a Haunted House by Grandy Hendrix. What is it about? Well, brother and sister, they haven't seen each other in 3 years. The sister is living, I think, in New York, and she has a husband or a boyfriend, and they have a daughter. And 6-year-old daughter. And she hasn't seen her brother in 3 years. And at a certain point, she gets a call from her brother saying that their parents died in a car accident 42 hours ago. So she isn't very happy already that he waited so long to tell her. And she travels to her hometown. She meets her brother there. They have to organize the funeral. And yeah, there's something wrong with that house. There's really something wrong with that house. And the mother loved puppets. All kinds, and the house is full of puppets, and there's one puppet called Pumpkin, and that's an evil one. And then there's some horrifying I love it. Scenes in there, and but it's a lot more than just a horror novel. It really talks about family trauma that goes from one generation to the next. It talks about brother and sister relationships. It talks about it really is a very interesting character study. It is absolutely worth reading, even if you don't like horror stories. I just liked it. I really enjoyed it, especially the ending. The last bit is when the daughter goes back home, then it's so fun. Ooh, yeah, I loved it. But it really talks about family trauma and how that can go from one generation to another. And yeah, it was a fun read, a fun read. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you had a wonderful reading week, and yeah, I hope I will have too. I am planning on reading the third book of the Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante. I'm looking forward to that. Those are quick and easy reads. And yeah, some other stuff that is on my new bookshelf. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.